Welcome back to the JLL coaching pod. I hope you're having a good day. Just sipping on a coffee. And let me tell you recently, this week, my digestion has been atrocious. Welcome to the pod. Moving forward, onwards and upwards. What is going on with the fitness industry? I have had a stick up my butt for the longest time. I've always been embarrassed. I would say up until about 18 months ago, I've been embarrassed to be a personal trainer. And that's simply because the average personal trainer, the average state of the industry that I've seen has been atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. For a variety of reasons that I'm going to dive into today. I'm pissed off. That's going to be the kind of narrative of this podcast. So let's get cracking. I just think, so historically, to become a personal trainer, you need to do about 3 minutes of work to become qualified. And then you get thrown on the gym floor and you can start training clients. And it's 3 minutes of not very hard work. So anyone can pretty much become a personal trainer, which has pros and cons. And due to the young nature of the industry, and the nature of the work itself being a one-on-one environment where you do have a lot of practical elements, obviously, there is a benefit to being thrown out into the gym floor and training people directly without any real deep technical knowledge and understanding. Naturally, there is a huge benefit to that. So typically, you've got this person who's probably lifted weights for a couple of years themselves, at least a couple, trained for a little bit of time, maybe got reasonable results themselves. And that could be down to a variety of factors. It might not necessarily be because they know what they're doing with regards to training, but at least they know how to get themselves in good shape, which is positive, super positive. But if you have the best genetics in the world, or even moderately good genetics, and you lift weights relatively hard, through any kind of range of motion, with any kind of technique, you can get good results. We've all seen the people in the gym who don't lift that with that good technique, but look phenomenal. We all have friends who don't even lift and look phenomenal. And the biggest selling point really for a lot of personal trainers is how you look. Naturally, if you look amazing, people are going to be like, well, I want to look like this person. They look great, therefore they will make me look great. And that's probably the one of the kind of bees in my bonnet, I would say, about this fitness industry. And I'm going to complain a lot initially, and then I'm going to try and solve the problems at the end of the podcast. So if you hang around for that, you'll get my resolutions to all this stuff. Because naturally, I'm not just going to sit here and complain, because that's absolutely worthless. I'm trying to find decent solutions for the industry so we can move forward in a more higher quality way. So we can move forward as an industry and have a better impact on people's lives, get better outcomes, etc., etc. I would actually argue. No, I'm not going to go down that route. I was going to say the worse the PT looks, the better he or she, the better they are, but that's not true either. You have to be able to kind of prove that at least you've got yourself in shape. That's very important. You do have to look good. But what I would argue is the harder it is to get yourself in good shape, the more tools you'll have in your toolbox to at least fix and change yourself. And therefore, you'll have more tools in the toolbox to help improve other people's physical qualities, because you've faced more challenges, you've answered more questions, you had to think more deeply about it. So I always say, my video that did the best was it took me 100 years. It took me 110 years to bench 100 kilos. And some people are like, well, it took me 3 months, mate. So what are you doing? And that's the kind of thing, they don't have to think, because it's just well, I started benching, and then each week I added 10 kilos, and after 10 weeks, I was there. And it's yeah, well, obviously, there's something different between me and you might not have had to kind of go round the fences to solve the problem of benching more, because naturally you could just do it to a socially respectable level that you never really had to think that deeply about it. You could also be a very, very good natural bench presser, for example, and also think very deeply about it. I'm not saying you can't. You definitely can, and there are people out there, and they'll be some of the best in the world. Because to get up there, if you're not, your genetics will get you so far. But then you need to start solving the problems and the deeper thinking, and that's really where this industry can move forward and will move forward. But apart from that, to dive into a few deeper problems, like I really feel it with my colleagues and people I have conversations with, it's all about short-term gains. And it's really about surviving in the short term, which is it's frustrating to see, but it's part of life. Naturally, you need to be able to support yourself as you're going on. But due to the nature of personal training, like, you have to do long hours typically, and quite a lot of hours to make decent money, depending where you live. Typically, for example, in London, the cost of living is very high. You need to work a lot to make a good bit of money. And when you're giving so much energy to your sessions and your clients, it's hard to go do that professional development around it, because you're doing so many sessions in itself, and then you don't have the energy or the time to go and develop yourself and learn new things and get answers for things like that. And then that's the huge issue, right? Like, everyone is so busy and they just want to make money, so they focus on that and it works, so they repeat that cycle. But the quality of what they're doing doesn't change. And that is a problem I can empathize with greatly. You have to stay afloat in the short term. You have to. There's no other option there. That's like priority number one, is to stay alive and put food on the table. Always will be. The solution there is, unfortunately, sacrifice a little bit of the quality of life short term in order for that long-term professional development. And that, what that can look like, is it's just got to be either trying to charge more so you don't have to do as many sessions. It can be ensuring you've got time in the diary each week to continue learning, putting money into that, paying mentors, etc., to kind of get better outcomes with your training, become a better coach, and earn more money in the long term. That is really the only way to deal with that. You got to kind of make the sacrifices in the short term to really build out in the long term. And they're probably worthy sacrifices, because everyone really needs to get better and the qualities need to be better. So you've got this loads of issues. I'm so negative. Loads of issues in the fitness industry. Aesthetic people who have good genes, are naturally lean, build a lot of muscle easily, are going to be like the pinnacle of people to look up to. Social media emphasizes this. Oh, that person looks good on this 10-second TikTok, therefore what they're talking about must be factual, must make sense. In the rehab world, the knees over toes guy, he gives simple information that gives everyone with knee issues the answers. And what's the issue with that? If it does, it maybe some of his stuff will definitely help people with knee issues. But David Gray just spoke about this. It's like, yes, some of the stuff will help, but the reasoning behind why it helps might be wrong. The discussion about why this exercise, tibialis raises, is the answer for everyone, why that might be wrong, has a huge influence on the fitness industry moving forward. Say, if the outcome is less knee pain, and your answer is tibialis raises, but that's not the actual reason why your knee pains come down, but everyone thinks it is, that's a huge step back for the fitness industry, because we've got the wrong answers. We've got the right outcome, but we've got the wrong answers. And this is huge. To decipher what the actual reason behind the good quality outcomes are is what's missing hugely in the fitness industry. It's like, I'm building muscle, doing this exercise, therefore it's great. Rather than deeply understanding the kind of physiological mechanisms, the biomechanical mechanisms behind it that will help yield results. A good example of this is if you get a general program. For example, 5x5. You're doing a 5x5. 5 sets of 5 reps at X weights. It's a super common program. Most gym goers have probably tried it for at least one session, and you get good outcomes from it. And then you're therefore a propagator of the 5x5. You're like, 5x5 is the best. I got good outcomes, therefore it's the best. But the reasoning behind those good outcomes is nothing to do with the 5x5 itself being anything special. It's much more to do with the mechanisms behind it. For example, if you are getting a lot of mechanical tension, the force produced within the cell to lead to a stimulus to adapt that system over time, because you're getting a close proximity to failure and you're getting that high levels of mechanical tension, that might be the leading thing, the special thing about the 5x5 rather than the 5x5 itself. But if you run around talking about how great the 5x5 is, rather than the actual mechanism that creates the adaptation and change, the 5x5 is going to be in the starlight rather than the actual mechanism and the deeper principles. So the first based principles is what's missing. The actual deep reasoning behind why things are happening is what's missing. And social media emphasizes this era of misinformation, because if you look good and you have this like 3x10 is the answer to all your problems with regards to building muscle, and you look good, so people are going to be like, trust that person, they look good, they've clearly had some success, they must know what they're talking about. And then you go and talk about it, and then it goes viral, and everyone's like, 3x10, let's do 3x10, that's how you get gains, it's volume, right? That's it. But that's not what the literature shows. It's not what the deep actual kind of classification of good quality outcomes in the literature indicates. So again, we're taking steps back rather than steps forward of the actual true reasonings why we're getting outcomes. It's such a big bee in my bonnet, because almost any PT can get reasonable outcomes. It's not that hard to get reasonable outcomes, but in my opinion, to get phenomenal outcomes where it's like you haven't seen your mum in 3 months, and then you come back and you see your mum and she's like, what's happened to you? You're literally a different human being. You've developed so much tissue, or you're playing sport and you've got significantly faster. These percentages of differences are not that clear or quantifiable in the short term, or they're not that clear to the general population, because expectations are a huge thing. And if you just do a basic, like 5x5, and that's your basic program that you follow, you will get good results. And the difference between that and following something where it's more principle based, and rather than just doing a 5x5 at say 85% of your 1 rep max, which is a lot, and you do 5 sets of 5 reps that are all 2 reps away from failure, or 8 out of 10 difficulty, 8 RPE, and the weights will change each set and it's a slightly different, that one will be more effective most likely, and the outcomes will be better. But you've technically done a 5x5, but the theory and the prescription and the principles behind it will be deeper. But the difference between this one, where the one where you've got a RPE based approach versus a percentage based approach, we're talking a few small percentiles, and each individual will have a different response to both situations. And therefore, it's really hard to back up the argument that you should base your training on these principles, because you can get good outcomes with this 5x5 at 85%. But it's more likely you'll get a better outcome, a more reliable, consistent, higher quality outcome with this prescription that's based more in the base principles in the literature. So it's like you got 2 trainers. You both program 5x5. But the way you get them to load it and challenge how hard you want the set to be, the quality of the work, the amount of weight and the difficulty will be different. The outcome from those two things, those two clients, those two trainers could be exactly the same because the genetics of those clients are different. And whoever has the better genetics will get the better outcome. So it's hard to prove that this scientific-based approach is more effective because people have different genetics. So you'd literally have to train the same person at the exact same time, keep all the other factors the same, and then compare the results to show any difference. It's a really hard thing to do. And because PTs generally get reasonable results, it's like, these are good enough. Why do we need to get these extra 10%, extra however many percents? It's hard to quantify anyway. But that is exactly what needs to be done. You need to pursue these base first principles to try and get better outcomes so we can yield more in the industry and get better results for people. Because in my opinion, that's what makes a difference between a good and a great coach. Getting those results that are phenomenal and having a good time doing it as well. There's loads of other factors. I'm just talking about results here. So another huge thing is like expectations of a client. If a client's like, my expectations are I'm going to get phenomenal results, and they get phenomenal results, it's like, yep, that's what I expected. But if their expectations are, I can't get stronger, I can't do this, and then I can't even lift a 5 kilo dumbbell, and then 6 months later they're like an absolute weapon, they've had their tits blown off. And it's like, look, I'm amazing, I've made huge gains here, my trainer's great. So expectations have a huge influence on the quality of the service we provide. And if you can you can almost pull the wool over the eyes by just saying, yeah, you've got stronger here. But everyone's going to get stronger from lifting weights. It's about the rate at which you gain that strength, the secondary and tertiary outcomes from that strength gains. What are the sacrifices and the trade-offs you've made? Are you now in pain in XYZ area? Have you lost mobility in XYZ area? Or are you stronger and more mobile and fitter and ticking all these other boxes? Which again, for someone in the general population who isn't deep enough in this to really feel the differences or see the differences or know what's good or not, it's hard to tell. To solve these problems, the biggest thing is information. So as trainers, they need to pursue truth and be better educators for themselves, each other, and clients to understand truly how XYZ outcomes, this amount of muscle for this kind of person, is really good gains. That's a really hard thing to quantify. You have to have your KPIs, your key performance indicators, to kind of see that along the way. And even then, it's still quite challenging. But my biggest argument for this, if you're a trainer or a coach, and you've got a client who finds it hard to get stronger or build muscle, and you've always done the 5x5 with 85%, and that's got results with everyone, but a client shows up and it doesn't get them results, that's where this is important. When you stop getting good results for your clients because your understanding is limited and it's not based in the scientific literature or the first base principles, what we as a culture, as a species, put as our highest level of information, the highest quality level of information. It's like this, you've got these kind of like pyramids or hierarchies of scientific studies, right? At the top, it's systematic reviews. If you gather your information that you base decisions off from systematic reviews rather than your own experience, it's likely you'll get a higher reliability of outcomes. You'll be more consistent with the outcomes that you get for your clients, so that when this one person shows up and you can't help them get results, or the results aren't like amazing, this helps solve that problem. So rather than just in the 5x5 at 85%, you look at the literature, what are the physiological outcomes we need? We need a high level of mechanical tension, we need them to eat sufficient protein, tick all these boxes, and then they start getting results for the first time in their life. They've lifted for 10 years and failed to make any real significant progress. But then they show up with you and they start making significant progress, and you blow their tits off because you're basing your decisions on better information, higher quality information. And that's really how most of the issues in the industry are solved. To dive into why this is more of an issue is you need a foundational understanding of what's going on in the industry, of scientific literature, to actually go ahead and even know that you need to make better decisions or know how to make better decisions. Because if you just think, I'm getting decent results, that's good enough, I'll leave it there, you'll never actually unlock your true potential and your client's true potential, because you're still making decisions based off worse quality information, personal experience, rather than scientific literature, rather than, it's like making decisions based off social sciences versus physics. Physics is a harder science, you can rely on the information to a higher standard, therefore you should try and make your decisions based off that information. It's a big problem. It's a huge problem, because personal trainers are typically quite charismatic people who can talk really well. And if you've got these people leading the industry, but their information that they're basing their decisions off is not scientific, it's not up to date with the science, you need a good understanding to then challenge these people who are already people who you are looking up to naturally as they're your leaders in the industry, the people you're working for. But they can be like, well, I've done this for 30 years, mate. I've done this for 20 years, mate. It's worked for me. It's worked for me. What are you talking about? I don't read the science anymore. I'm done. I'm not learning anymore. Therefore, it's so hard to move forward as an industry when you've got these people blocking information, or you've got these people, it's always the same thing, right? But throughout culture, you've got these people at the top, royalty, politicians, whatever, and they will do what is best for them to keep their position and to manage themselves. And you get a different quality of person in those roles naturally. There's going to be a huge variety of person in these royal roles, politicians, whatever. And if they are kind of stuck in their own ways and not looking to move forward, then the influences that trickle down throughout society will naturally be negative and of a lower quality than if that person at the top is ethically inclined, they're always learning, always trying to get better. That will trickle down nicely in the country. I love Albania. They used to have a leader and he basically closed off the country. No Western information is allowed in. He was a psycho. He basically killed someone because they did some abstract art that looked like they had a bit of Western influence. So no one's even making art anymore. It's mental. The leader of Albania actually had a building in the city centre where him and other politicians and his friends could go and consume Western information. And he would spy on people in this building to see if they were being unloyal and things like that. It's just crazy. That kind of leader in the fitness industry would just pull us back so much with regards to developing and actually improving as an industry, because they're like, I've got the right answers, these other answers I'm not even looking at, no one's allowed to look at them, I'm at the top, listen to me, blah blah blah. Quality of information suffers, quality of outcome suffers, and the industry suffers. So that information is always the answer. How do you solve these problems? I've been ranting a lot. Hope you've had a good time listening. I sat down last Sunday and spoke about my principles, spoke about them last week on the pod. My number one is pursue truth. Make decisions based off principles. Be obsessed with learning. Challenge everything. Never be satisfied. Look at the hierarchy of evidence. Things are complex. We're always wrong. We're just trying to get better answers. pursue quality, high standards. There has to be a challenge for adaptations, both learning and physical. In order to get consistent and repeatable high level of results, we need good answers. We need better answers. That's how we lead to these good outcomes. I'm going to leave you there. That was a big rant. I hope you enjoyed the pod. Hope you have a good day. I'll see you on the flip side.